That was great. That was fun.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes,
Yes.
I barely got her into the cave, but yes, you can see the whole
Yeah.
setup where things are going.
Yeah. We should mention, by the way, I've got construction next door. There's this guy named Phil. Anyway, the book is just a delight. I haven't for people who, there's the British comedy like Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett and folk like that who write their particular kind of Pythonesque whimsy. And then there's the American humor in fantasy, which is, well, some of it is droll, like Poole Anderson, or even a tiny bit of lesser Frank Herbert works. But Piers Anthony is really who comes to mind. Robert Sheckley.
Yeah.
Although Sheckley's really satire, which your book is as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a loving poke at the industry, really. But
yeah,
the true satire for me is the executives. I don't know if you've gotten to that section yet, but yeah, there's a whole section about.
I was just entering there.
Okay, all right, yeah, the whole executive meeting.
Yes, you now know exactly where I am in the book, which is what, about 3/5, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're over the halfway point for certain.
Oh yeah, I definitely am. And I wanted to mention before my connection to all this, which is, and one thing that actually does not appear in the book and that few people think about are the agents. I worked at 3 places. I was a talent residuals clerk, which probably a job no longer exists because it's all computerized. But a TNR person, as opposed to the other TN whatever, is somebody who we get the checks. I work for the agency or a manager. I worked for 2 managers and an agent. No, other way around, whatever. And the checks come to me, the clerk, and I take the check. I make sure that the payment is correct, that they have all the coffee breaks, all the meal breaks. If not, there are union penalties. I had to know all the union rules inside and out because we're representing the actor. And then I cash the check. Then I write a new check, removing 10%.
Right.
Which is a 15% for managers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's more, at least in the book industry, I'm under the impression 15% is more likely for.
It's different between the two. But the name of the TV show now, the American or the British version, is 10%.
Aha.
The French version, the original, in case you've never seen it, it's on Netflix. Utterly wonderful. It's
really good.
It's called Call My Agent.
Right.
And it was after 4 seasons, people just yelling for more. So there's going to be more seasons, which in a way is sort of too bad because they actually closed all the arcs.
Yeah. You could stop right there and never get any more and you'd be fine.
Yeah, and you'd be perfectly happy. Now there's a British version, and I think there may be more other versions to come. The British version is called 10%, which was the actual the French name, 10%. Of the French version, and then the American version is fun and all that. It's also all the actors playing alternate universe versions of themselves.
Nice.
where they're nastier than they would be in real life, or how dare you put me on the same set with blah blah blah, who's my ex-lover. I never want to talk to him again, but they're married in real life and very 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 happy. So they should get Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon.
They'd be great. I love them.
They'd be wonderful together. And for those who don't know, yes, married for what,
For-
30 years?
At least, yeah, yeah.
They have
They're
adult,
one of the,
they have adult children. So
Mhm,
um,
exactly.
yeah. So for me, I'm always looking at that behind the scenes thing when we're talking about movies and theater, and we all, at one place we were also a literary agent. So I
Okay.
had a lot of fun playing with all that. And when I was doing this, which was in the early 80s,
Mhm.
I said, this should be a TV show. These people are crazy. They're wonderful. They go onto a set and all of a sudden find out, wait, I've got to wear what?
Right.
You know, like a rubber dragon suit or something like that.
Yeah.
And yes, we had that really happened. It wasn't a dragon suit, but it was a mythical. Yeah. So I was thinking of this stuff 30 years ago, and then all of a sudden, not one, but two with more TV series coming up, to which my answer is, hey, where's my 10%? Because
Exactly.
I mean, the fact that I never told anybody about it.
Mhm.
Actually, I did. I told the lead agent, Lester Lewis, who was a legend. He was a
Right.
legend. He went back to radio.
Oh, okay.
He represented Fred Allen. I mean, well,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, it's been a while since Entourage was on the air, but I think one of the breakout characters in Entourage was the agent Ari,
Right. Yeah.
who, like he became the reason for me at least to watch that show. So I'm not saying that, they naturally said, oh, we should do a show about agents or whatever, but I can see the sort of the continuum of let's keep exploring the behind the scenes of how the sausage gets made.
And given HBO and all that, I'm surprised they didn't do a spinoff.
Yeah, I do not know this for sure. I think he might have been a little bit of a problematic actor. I'm not sure.
Okay,
Not
yeah.
sure.
I never, Entourage was not quite my thing.
Yeah.
But you are in the industry. This is worth noting. You're not an actor. You're
No.
not a manager. You're not a technician. You are the lowest of the low. You're a critic.
Excuse me. Actually, I don't do a ton of criticism, to be honest. I'm an entertainment journalist, which means I'm actually writing feature stories and doing interviews.
That's not the lowest of the low.
Yeah, exactly. One step up.
No, you're exalted.
Oh, I thank you.
Well, I mean, actors want write-ups.
Oh, of course they do.
Yeah. So no, it's the other direction.
Right. Yeah, I have done criticism in the past, and God bless people who do that. That's totally valuable. It's just not something I really enjoyed doing. I didn't like having to look at a piece of art and make an immediate, evaluation of it as being good or bad or anything like that. Invariably, I would find things I didn't like, and this doesn't make a lot of sense for as many things as I saw. I had a hard time, really glowing up something. Because I felt like there were always problems. If you're always looking for cracks, you're going to find cracks. So I don't think that was my forte, to be honest.
Yeah, I've always thought about this in the genre community, the writing genre community. I mean, you've always been writing, but a novel is like leveling up.
Yeah, exactly. Different level for sure.
But I've always thought about, I work on podcasts for John Joseph Adams, who has 3 magazines and doing umpteen stories a month. We're doing I do 6 podcasts a week as a post-production person, and I host 2 of them. And I always wonder about people like him and Cherie Renee Thomas of FNSF and all that. We all know each other. Everybody knows all the writers. We go to cons. Now, there are cons in Tune In Tomorrow, and there are and there are real TV show cons, as Star Trek conventions. I worked
certainly
on the very first one, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
Publicity, yeah. And 1970, thereabouts. And the thing is that the actors are separate. The talent is separate from the fans, except for when They sit behind a table and charge for autographs.
Right. And of course, there are multiple kinds of cons, as you well know. There are more fan-driven cons where the fans kind of run the whole thing and they do their own panels. And there's like a guest of honor, or there's a specific person or two. Whereas
Right
cons,
now,
I think,
in
right.
San Diego.
Exactly. Well, I mean, that to me is a more traditional kind of con where you have very much a separation between the talent and the attendees. Whereas the smaller cons, I mean, the con in my book, for example, is loosely modeled off of Aresia, but you know, those are much more where you're in and among everybody.
Yeah, and to me that is the real kind, because
Yes.
after all, the fanish conventions like Aresia go back to the 1920s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Comic-Con. Well, once upon a time, it was a comic convention, but
right, and it was probably much more intimate and small scale, and then it kind of leveled up, as you said earlier. But
and there are now tens of thousands of people attending these things.
Precisely.
The largest Spanish convention I'm aware of that ever occurred was a Worldcon, was about 6,000 people.
Right.
And that was considered way too big.
And that's a big one, right?
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah. That year, Robert Heinlein was guest of honor.
Oh, okay.
Mid-Americon. I was there. God help me. So getting back to my point, which is something I rarely ever do, the people, and of course now I've forgotten, but yeah, you know everybody. Everybody knows everybody. It's hard to be a critic or an editor when you look somebody in the eyes and say, well, the reason I turned down that story, and I used to be a first reader at Galaxy magazine, so for Jim Bain.
Okay.
So I'm familiar with this kind of stuff where Bain would have to look people, you know, square in the eyes and say to themselves, yeah, I just rejected you real bad, didn't I? Actually, you never write nasty.
Yeah, you don't have to reject somebody real bad, but there's going to be reasons why a story doesn't work. I mean, you know, the last time you had me on, I had just done an anthology across the universe, Tales of Alternative Beatles. And we got some really great stories.
By the way, we're not talking, you know, entomologists here. We're talking
the Beatles
members, yes.
John, Paul, George, Ringo. And we got some great stories submitted to us by some names you might even recognize, and we couldn't use them. We either had something else like that, or it didn't quite fit the tone, or it was too long, or, you know, there are a lot of different reasons. So I think there's ways to reject people without it being a bad rejection, but I imagine it's a lot harder when you know the people really well. Yeah,
it's seldom a bad rejection. And then there are the people putting out magazines, like John puts out 3 a month. And is publishing X many stories a month, and people are sending him 2 stories a month.
Right.
And many of them will never, ever get a nibble. And it's either A, he hates me, or B, he's a sucky editor. It's never, maybe you need to join a writer's group and work on my writing.
Right. You know, it's always about the other side.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the only way you get better, is by figuring out that it has actually, at least in large part, you. I've been writing for years and years and years and years. And I only recently started getting, by recently, I mean like within the past 10 years, started getting published. But I have novels that are sitting there. I have short stories I've never shown to anybody. I've got a whole bunch of stuff, because for a lot of years, I was afraid to show it to anybody. I was afraid to be criticized. I was afraid. I didn't take it well. You know, if you told me one thing about it, I'd be like, you're wrong, and here's why.
Yeah.
And I got a grip on myself. I got a grip on the things that I can do and that I can't do. And I understood writing groups a lot better. And I was able to take criticism. But I think there are people who think that they just sit in their room and they write a draft. Maybe they write a second draft, but I don't know about that. I'll just write a draft.
Yeah.
And then you just shoot it off and figure somebody will just tell you, well, that's wrong and that's wrong. But otherwise, we'll keep it. And it's a process. It's a whole process. Tune in tomorrow.
No, go on, please.
I was going to say, tune in tomorrow. I think I have 11 drafts of it. Now, not literally.
Now you are working with the writers group.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't contribute; they just critique.
Right, but yeah, it's it's something that I did work through the writers group and that I got great feedback on. I didn't have to rewrite it the entire time. You know, didn't have to rewrite it from start to finish each time, but I did have to at least go through it 11 times. And when my book is over 100,000 words long, so that's 1,000,000 words.
Yeah.
Not everybody has to do 1,000,000 words to get a book out. You don't even have to do half of that to get a short story out or anything, but it is not a one-shot deal. Even I'm sure Neil Gaiman does not just cough out a draft and send it off. You know
I
what
know
mean?
I know for a fact.
That he does not.
I can name his first readers. Uh,
Right. So, I mean, even the best know that whatever comes out first is not the finished story. Even what comes out second or maybe even third is probably not the finished story.
yeah.
And that it's worth it to vet it with other people.
Yeah.
I often say this comment, but I thoroughly believe it. And to me, it changed the way I see criticism. And I'm going to look off to the side to read it because it's actually hanging on my wall. I have 8 Rules for Writing by Neil Gaiman. And yeah, and the 6th one is my favorite. He says, I'm sorry, it's the 5th one. Remember, when people tell you something's wrong or doesn't work for them, they're almost always right. When they tell you exactly what they think is wrong and how to fix it, they're almost always wrong.
Yeah.
And that really changed it for me, because if you show it to a bunch of people and all of those people or most of those people say this one thing, this same thing is problematic, it probably is. And you need to rethink that. But if they say this is problematic, and by the way, this is how I would have done it if I had written it, you have the option of not taking that advice. You can be like, that's a great idea, I might use that. Or you might say, you know, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm going to do my own thing.
But yeah, you have to, if you're joining a writers group, you have to be able to develop a bit of thick skin and not take it personally.
Yeah.
I have a friend, somebody who I like a lot, you know, the same person, who joined a particular writers group, might even be the one you were in. Fine writer, lovely person, wrote and felt that the criticisms that this person got were like, well, you didn't like it, it's unfair. And not even necessarily that. It was just very hard for them to sit in that room and have their baby tell how their baby is flawed.
Right. Yeah. And the key with a really good writers group is that you have a certain, over time, you develop this trust, so that when somebody comes to you and says, you know, your baby is ugly, that it's not meant to be a personal thing, and you can hear what they're trying to say, as opposed to saying, oh, they're just being mean, or they're jealous, or they tell everybody their stuff is a mess. And when you can hear the criticism in the light of love, really, because I was in a writers group where I really liked somebody's writing, but he kept turning in stuff that was really problematic and hard to follow. And I'm like, I really like this concept. Can you make this concept work, please? Because I want to read this final story. And I felt bad saying that, but that's how you will improve, is by
it's
making
a relationship.
It is. You have to be able to hear the criticism, and you have to know how to give it.
And the good thing about a writers group, as opposed to, you know, if you're Neil Gaiman, you have first readers.
Yeah.
People who you know and trust and will give you critiques, and you take it or not.
Right.
A writers group, it's everybody's turn in the barrel at one point or another.
Right.
You're getting criticized today, you will be critiquing in a month.
Right.
So it's everybody has to trust everybody as being benevolent.
Right.
And if somebody in that group isn't benevolent, they won't be in that group for long.
No, if it just feels mean-spirited, it's not going to go anywhere, for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention too about the whole idea of criticizing and all that, the natural next step after that is, you know, reviewing, because as somebody who has a book who's about to come out, I've already told everybody I know, if you see a good review, tell me about it. If you see a bad one, I never want to know about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm the person who things will stick in their head, and it might even prevent me from doing writing for a while. I'll be that, I don't want to be that sensitive, but it can be that way. And I actually wrote a blog post a couple of years ago about, 5 ways to write a review and why your friends keep asking you to do it. And what I wanted to convey to anybody who is going to write a review of my book, of any book, is I think that you can get, you do not have to write War and Peace. You does not even have to be about War and Peace, but it can be a short thing that in large part summarizes the book. If you do a quick summary, like this is what the book is about, this is what the book reminds me of, like in terms of other authors, and then maybe have a sentence about, and it works because it was great because, like, one sentence. That's a more valuable review, I think, for readers than somebody who spends a paragraph or 3 paragraphs detailing why the characters were great or not great, or why the plot was bad or not bad. Or because to me, a book, it's so subjective why you like a book or why you don't like a book. And there are some great authors out there whose works I don't get into. I'm just not,
Yeah.
it's not for me. And
I have an author, a friend who's an author, one of the biggest in the industry,
right.
And I don't like that person's main body of work.
Right, which is totally fair, because you're not meant
Although,
to
and now I'll
enjoy.
give away who it is.
Okay.
Everybody should watch Dark Winds.
Okay.
Which this unnamed person co-produced with Robert Redford.
Got it.
So everybody knows now that I used to be friends with Robert Redford. So just couldn't get into Game of Thrones. Just could not.
And that's fine. That is totally fine. You know, again, not everybody needs to eat every flavor of ice cream to enjoy ice cream.
Well, that was blood ice cream.
Blood ice cream. That's the new Targaryen flavor.
Served at red weddings, you know, it's
it's all the rage.
Yeah.
Made of rage.
Yeah, indeed.
So anyway, but what the thing I would convey to anybody is, if you do decide you want to review something like on Goodreads or Amazon or wherever you happen to do it, for me personally, I have gotten the most out of reading a review that tells me what the thing is, as opposed to my personal subjective opinion about it is this.
As I was taught in grade school, but I think is a fine line that is no longer as observed, is that there are reviews and there are reviewers and critics. And a reviewer tells you what something is and might even say, I particularly appreciated blah, blah, blah. But a critic's job is to critique.
Right.
It could be totally positive, but there stands a good possibility that there will be something that might rankle the writer.
And, you know, there are pros out there who do this and know what to look for and can be somewhat objective about what they're saying. And I totally trust their opinions. I think the thing is, we are dealing with a lot of people who are not pros, who very much have an opinion and need to have that opinion out there. And it's totally fair that, you know, you should be able to say what you want to say. I'm not telling you shouldn't. But I think that knowing, you will do a better service by explaining what's going on if this is not your job. Than to try and nitpick here and there. And you know, I've heard people who say, I got a 1-star review on Amazon because the book arrived damaged. I'm like, why was that your fault now? You know, I get it. You will have a voice, but well, try to be fair to the people.
One thing I ignore, although Goodreads is sort of an exception, but I ignore not crowdfunded, but crowd reviews.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe in Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right.
You know, where you get bots that go in and go down on, let's use a TV show, Ms. Marvel. Yeah. Because it's not a white guy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you know, it's great that we all have a voice. Not every voice is going to have the same validity in terms of telling me what I need to know, which is this a show I want to watch? Yeah. And that's why you have to, I prefer the ones that are just going to tell me a little bit more about it. Yeah. So that I can decide for myself.
I'm the same way. I go to the competitor to Rotten Tomatoes. I go to Metacritic.
Oh yeah, that's another place you can go.
Yeah, sure. I like Metacritic, who do a similar thing, averaging out the scores, and their critic reviews are not that far off from Rotten Tomatoes, but you can click on the whole review. They give you a paragraph of
Right.
each person. They assign a score, and then it's like, oh, that's, the New Yorker, Anthony Lane. I
Yes, and you
love
know where it
reading
came from.
Anthony Lane, even when I totally disagree.
Right.
And
Well,
that's
even, although even Rotten Tomatoes does have the sort of the fan score and the critic score too.
Yeah.
They do have both.
Yeah. I just giving a score to each. I just prefer a little bit the Metacritic, the choices of critics they
Yes.
use.
Yes.
And I think there was a slight difference. I could be wrong, could be coincidence, but there was a time when Metacritic was a startup and they went all on their own, and now they're part of CBS.
Oh, I see.
CBS Interactive. But I think they're fairly independent, but I think there must be somebody in there who's thinking, ooh, do I really want to, always do the NBC critic?
Well, I imagine that they don't want to put a damper on people who are reviewing the CBS shows, for example, because then you could stumble into, the whole Streisand effect, which is
Yes.
somebody deciding to make public that, oh, I tried to write a review about a CBS show and they shut me down,
Yeah.
So I don't think they want to do that either. It's to their best interest to not mess around with
I've never heard of the
area.
term the Streisand effect. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
It's perfect. It's utterly perfect. How long were you writing about the industry before you struck into fiction?
Well, I started writing fiction first, but I didn't think I'd make a living as a fiction writer, which I'm still not making a living as a fiction writer. So correct.
And very few people ever will.
And very few people do. So I said, what else can I do that allows me to write for a living? And I think my mom was the one who said, oh, you should be a journalist. And I said, well, what is that? And she explained to me what it was. And I was like, yes, I could write for newspapers and things, I think. So I got into journalism when I was in high school. I went to Boston University where they had a good journalism program, and I studied journalism through that program. I did TV, I did radio, I did print, I did all of them. And I decided I liked print best. And then I had already been doing, I had been doing freelance on the side while I was still in college. So that was, that allowed me to bridge into the professional world even when I was still in college. And then when I got out of college, I just continued freelancing until I got a job at a soap opera magazine. So this has been basically since college that I've been writing about entertainment one way or the other. I started a lot with music because music was what I was really passionate about in college. And I'm still very passionate about music, but my kind of music. I think music continued moving on a spectrum that I fell out of. And I still very much admire musicians for what they do, but I got into television and film once music was clearly not a path I was going to be staying on.
Yeah. So what are you working on now?
Well, I have two things. One of which is I actually wrote another book during the pandemic, during the lockdown part of the pandemic anyway. So that is it's a superhero related story.
Yeah, for me, it's still the lockdown part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I hate to say we're done with the pandemic. We're not, but during the real heightened part of the pandemic, I wrote a novel about superheroes, trying to take a different spin on it.
Okay. Hopefully not the boys.
No, exactly. In fact, I'm focusing more on the fact that that women have the superpowers in this universe.
Yes.
And the other thing I'm working on is a possible sequel for Tune In Tomorrow. It would be in the universe of Tune In Tomorrow, but not literally with the same characters. So related, but not exactly the same. I wanted to have a few things ready in case it goes gangbusters. Please buy my book, gangbusters. And if it goes gangbusters, then I will have the next thing ready to get started. I've got like 5 chapters. I would have to show the publisher and see if they wanted it. And that's what's coming next.
And then Maury can retire.
Yeah, Maury, my husband. He is going to retire actually in a couple of years, but yes, he could retire.
Is he really? Okay, congratulations.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time.
Oh.
As far as Zoom is concerned. And you have something to do in like 20 minutes, right?
I do, yes. I write for the Today Show's website, and I'm on the clock with them at noon every day.
Ah, okay, right. So start with that. Where do people find your writing from journalism on through the rest
Right. So I have
and editing?
Sure. So I write for the Today Show, Variety, the LA Times, and sometimes Emmy Magazine. And there's usually a few scattered other things here and there. But you can find links to all my articles and links to all my fiction at randeedawn.com.
So that is
That is the place to go.
yeah, the hub.
Right. We have a newsletter. We've got information about my reading series, which is in Brooklyn once a month. And all that stuff is there on my webpage. So and there's a contact form. So if you can't find something, just reach out and ask.
Yeah. And my reading series, as people know, is still virtual.
Yes.
Because I am still very, very concerned. Now you have it's wonderful that you can be outdoors as long as the weather permits. And if
Right.
not, then people can make their own personal choices.
Right. And we are indoors, but then we keep the doors open. So there's a cross breeze. I mean,
Yeah,
everything's a risk.
yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. But in our case, we're still, for the moment, we haven't booked August yet. I may take August off. We used to take June, July, August off.
Very
So
nice.
we may take August off, and we've got Sarah Langan in September to start our 32nd season. Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
Impressive.
And again, I didn't start it. Gordon Van Gilder did.
Yes.
And I am the eighth Doctor. There have been that many other curators, but I'm also the longest lasting curator.
I am not surprised.
And I've been recording it since day one.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of fun. And for those who don't know, that's the New York Review of Science Fiction Readings, often the first Tuesday of every month. Yours is the third Tuesday of every month. And KGP Fantastic Fiction is the third Wednesday of every month at the KGP.
Is that their new date? Because they had to shift their dates recently.
I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, there was, I think they had to shift their dates for various unimportant reasons, but I think they have moved to a different date on the schedule.
Okay, well, that's good, because I was concerned about you being on the third Tuesday and them being on the third Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we ended up getting started originally during the pandemic when nobody else was doing it. I mean, we started doing this in 2021 before a lot of people have reopened again. So yeah. the conflict wasn't necessarily.
Oh, we didn't miss an episode as long as we were online. Yeah. And the joy of online, we started with Jack Dan in Melbourne.
Exactly.
And when we do Sarah Langan in September, she'll be in Portland, Oregon.
Very nice.
But then all of a sudden we discover, hey, everybody here's from Brooklyn. Yeah, Amy Goldschlager, Barbara, you, whoever. Yep. So
yes.
So again, people visit the hub again is RANDEEDAWN.com.
Yes, normal. I got the top level domain on there. Yeah, randeedawn.com.
The TLD, absolutely. Yeah. The kind of journalist I was a tech journalist.
Right.
So it's a TLD for
got
us.
It.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time. It's always great to chat with you.
Yeah, and next time, if we're lucky, live with phone calls.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to do that.
Okay, good. So thanks again.
Thanks again, Jim.
And let's see. Oh, I have to stop recording. That's what I have to do. I was going to accidentally click